we've made allusions to Indian Legion Rush, and I think now's a good time to introduce our Civ of the Month, which would be the Indians.
My favorite Civ.
Is it?
Yep.
It's one of my favorite Civs, too. It's like a new game every time.
I like the diversity. I also like that it's not necessarily a Civ that's going to get the game over with in Ancient. It might be a little bit of a longer game.
Well, you haven't played my Indians, have you?
Well,
forget fundamentalism.
Yeah, you don't get that until medieval, though. So.
No, but I get what you're saying.
It's not like the Arabs or the Aztecs. You might really be setting out to win the game in the Ancient era and not worry about expansion or teching at all. But with the Indians, I mean, that's got to be somewhere on the brain because they're not that awesome in Ancient.
Right.
They're weakest, and yeah.
Compared to a lot of other Civs, they're not that bad.
No, they're not bad.
And so let's tell people why that is. Starting out, they begin the game with access to all resources. In the Ancient, their cities are not affected by anarchy. Medieval, they get the knowledge of religion. Industrial, they construct settlers at half price. And in Modern, they get half-price courthouses. Big thing is they begin the game with access to all resources. And then they also do cities not affected by anarchy.
Anarchy, you don't think of it very often until you actually play them, especially if you get perhaps the Anglo-Wat for the Pyramid, where you have access to all governments. But even without it, throughout the game, you're just, okay, now I want to make a settler, so I'll go to Anarchy and switch to Republic. And next turn I want to attack, so I'll go to Anarchy and switch to Fundamentalism.
Mm-hmm. It's really useful, but it does bear mentioning that unless you find Angkor Wat or somehow get a government early in the game, it doesn't actually help you in the Ancient era to have that bonus. It doesn't really help you until Medieval when you get the free religion. And even then, if your two governments are despotism and fundamentalism, you're probably not going to be switching back and forth a whole lot. Maybe we should talk about what access to all resources means.
Oh, definitely.
In Civ Rev, there's special resources that give bonuses above the 2 hammers that trees provide, the 2 apples that grasslands provide, and the 2 beakers, or actually, Erlenmeyer flasks that sea tiles provide. That's what they actually are. Special tiles, like with dye, would give you 5 trade. A tile with oak gives you 5 production, or a composite tiles like a whale gives you 4 food and 2 trade. The Indians get to use all these special tiles at the start, but it ramps up. You get just a +1 bonus at the start, and then +2 when you get into Medieval, +3 at Industrial, +4 in Modern. If the bonus goes that high, it doesn't exceed whatever the bonus should give you.
For example, a whale would give you 2 beakers, or Erlenmeyer flasks, 2 beakers and 1 apple in Ancient. In Medieval, you get 2 beakers and 2 apples, and in Industrial, you get 2 beakers, 3 apples. Modern, you get 2 beakers and 4 apples.
The other thing is that you will always spawn next to a special resource.
Oh, yeah.
When you play the Indians, no other Civ will spawn next to one. So you'll always be able to take advantage of that at the start of the game if you settle in place, as long as you don't move to a space that doesn't have any special resources.
One other thing, which I guess you can think, because if you're listening to Revcast, and if you happen to not read 2K forums religiously, is you can settle on top of those resources and get a one-time boost. So settle on top of a production resource, you can get 10 hammers right away. Or if you settle on top of a trade resource, you get 10 gold. A culture resource, you get 10 culture, just for one turn. Wouldn't recommend it that often, but if you're moving your settler several turns at the beginning of the game, it's a great way to settle rush somebody.
Better with your second or third city, not your settler as much.
I've had discussions with people who don't think the Indians are very good. You're going to be an Ancient for 20 or 30 turns, and so all that adds up. I love getting an oak resource to start.
Or a rubber.
If not a production one, then the growth one. Cattle is good, or wheat, because then your capital can be a really good settler pump at the start of the game because you can grow up in 4 turns.
I don't mind starting next to dye either. I prefer it in my later cities, but...
Yeah, dye is great for the Indians. It's really good.
Even for that first horse rush. Speeds it up a little.
What is the first 10, 20 turns of y'all's games, or basically even the Ancient era in general? What do you guys do online or against single player with the Indians?
First 5 turns, you're sending out 2 warriors, almost always.
Or 4 turns if you have a production resource.
Exactly. Already it's paid for itself.
I'm going to send out 2 warriors to pick up gold, then I'm going to research horseback riding, and then I'm going to kick out some horsemen to hopefully take some capitals or kill my enemy or whatever they're going to be able to do.
Kill barbs in head-to-head.
Yeah, and take a lot of the gold off the map. That's what horses are good for, too. And then after that, I want to hopefully have my 100 gold city, and I'm going to look for good resources to settle on. Like to settle on whale and dye, because now you got a city that does 5 trade and has a little bit of growth. And as soon as you get to medieval, it's going to be 6 trade and actually decent growth. Looking for maybe a city with production resources, too, if I don't already have that in Delhi. If I'm kind of safe, I want to expand out to probably 5 or 6 cities at that point.
Do you usually settle a production city in Ancient?
Yeah.
Yeah? I think I tend to wait more till I have like a 3-pop and maybe I can touch on a little more. Maybe that's just me, but I usually don't.
No, I tend to save the production cities at least until I'm 3-pop. But it depends. If that's my closest one that I've got, then I'll do it. But even a production city can still help out with pushing more settlers out. But I'd still rather my production city to be a unit production city to get a barracks in for a bigger force. I'm sure it can work either way. If you just need to push more and more horsemen out, which sometimes that's what the game calls for.
I mean, I can take some time and grow it. Maybe I'll get irrigation or something like that.
Right.
I want to have a city anywhere there's oak or rubber for sure. It doesn't necessarily have to be all about production all the time. Just having that there is going to help me at some point in the game.
But I guess I don't use my resources so much in the Ancient. I don't find that the resources...
I'm crawling all over those things because it makes each city 25% better, so if I have 4 of them there, then that's like another city.
Well, I'm still settling. I'm still trying to settle as much as I can, but I'm not really feeling the big boost from them until I get to the medieval and then later on to the industrial.
Have you ever gotten a real game benefit, like it helps you to win by settling near rubber with any other civ? Rubber, by the way, needs automobile.
Yeah.
How many times have you researched automobile? Can I ask you that?
Well, online, hardly ever.
I can think of once.
Yeah, there's a lot of resources that you just never reach in the online game, and if you did, the game would be pretty much decided by that point, or hey, you wouldn't get to use it for too long, but it's nice. Sometimes with the Indians, you can just build some giant production cities with those hill resources coupled with forest or rubber.
Especially if you get a workshop. I've had a few Indian games where I hammer out the East India Company or something like that fairly early in the game without any trouble.
Let me ask you this. Do you usually backfill text to try and get all your 20s to push into medieval, or do you go slower, maybe you're in 10 science a turn to just limp your way into medieval and get better bonus?
It just depends on the game. Getting to the medieval is a good thing for them because that's a strong bonus that they get in the medieval. They get religion. I still prefer to use kind of a backfill method where I work on gold for a little while and try to settle 4, 5, 6 cities in the ancient era if I can do it quickly, and work on gold in all my cities that I'm not working on settlers. And then once I'm making 21 gold per turn, then I switch to science, and then that usually will push you into the medieval from backfilling all the 20 beaker texts.
That's what I normally set out to do, but I find it's not too infrequent that, okay, so I'm researching horseback riding on purpose, and I'm probably getting bronze working at some point, either by stealing it from someone or researching it myself. Maybe I got pottery out of a barb, or maybe I attacked somebody and I got ceremonial burial. Now I have 4 techs. I can do 10 science per turn or something like that. Why not just get alphabet?
Mm-hmm.
Now I got religion. Now all my extra resources are +2 instead of +1. And yeah, the cost to rush things goes up. So if I want to rush some more horsemen, or if I want to rush a galley, or if I want to rush some legions or something like that, or settlers, try to take care of that ahead of time. But I'm not going to delay getting to medieval very much. I'd like to get there sooner because getting fundamentalism is a huge boost. Getting the extra resources, bonuses, is very, very nice. And my new cities will be 3 population, which is always good. If Arabs aren't in the game, then there's the first to research bonus for religion, which is +1 culture per city. Icing on the cake. It's just extra good. No reason not to get that as soon as possible.
If you got 4 or 5 cities, all of a sudden, instead of making 5 culture per turn, you're making 10. And you're all of a sudden a great culture civ. On top of you're getting fundamentalism, which means you can be a bully now. And plus you got access to all these resources. Starting with the medieval era, you've really gone from a civ that, yeah, they can use some resources and get a little boost out of them, to all of a sudden, you're a freaking well-rounded civ that can do a lot of things. Usually civs only get one little boost in the medieval and that's it, but they get a 3 or 4-fold boost from just jumping to the medieval. So I can understand why you'd want to just go ahead and get there, but I wouldn't say I've got 1 or 2 cities. Let me spend 5, 6, 7 turns just researching.
I'm talking about if it's going to be just a couple turns or maybe even 4 turns to get there. If I'm at 1 or 2 techs, then I'm probably going to try to get more settlers out before I do anything else.
Especially if you're researching prerequisites for like code of laws anyway. You can just earn alphabet to push yourself along. Why not? Only a couple other civs do I do that with. Maybe the Germans, maybe Americans, but who else do you not really backfill with?
Chinese.
Well, we won't talk about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also transitioning from the ancient to the medieval, do you guys ever think about, well, I am going to get religion. Should I build a bunch of cheap units? And then once I get to the medieval, switch to fundamentalism and go attack.
Again, I'm not too concerned about getting a whole lot of building done before medieval, because as soon as I hit medieval, I've already settled the oak and the rubber and the aluminum and the whatever else. The costs of things go up, but I have extra production, so I can build these things more easily.
Right.
So I'm not going to delay it just to rush a couple legion armies. I might take a couple turns out and build up some gold turns, rush legions for a couple turns, and then tech forward.
If I don't have a good production resource, I often do it. If it's a losing game, I'll do it.
Yeah. Also, if I need a galley, if I know where an artifact is or something like that, definitely want to get that thing done in Ancient.
Oh, yeah.
Cost of it goes up to 90 gold.
Once you know where that artifact is, go for it.
So now you're in the medieval, and you've got all these things we mentioned.
Game over.
That's it. Quit right now.
The Indians win. But that's not really the case, so let's talk about the option to be in fundamentalism. You've usually got +1 culture per turn per city. You've got another boost in your resources. You're doing +2 now instead of +1 in your resources. So what does the medieval look like for you guys?
I want 10 cities.
Yeah, 10 cities is a good number. You asked if you build units in Ancient, and then the only ones I really build, besides like a horse army or 2, are settlers. But then once you hit medieval, you can actually start picking a path. Maybe you do a legion rush. I tend to pick a tech that I think that I can get, like maybe navigation for a free galleon or something, and try and exploit my advantage while I have it. You get a little stronger in industrial, but medieval, most civs are not very strong. That's when you're trying to bring the hammer if you can.
Oftentimes, I'm looking for that production city right at the beginning, and then legions, if you can span them out for 10 hammers apiece and have them be vet and then attack in fundamentalism, I mean, that's 13.5 for each one.
Your rubber double tree city has 8 hammers, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sweet.
Or you can keep pumping out horsemen if you want, or catapults for protection or for rushing.
Or you use all that production for building settlers.
Yep.
Yeah.
A 2-population city with oak and fish or whale or something like that. Once you get into Code of Laws, that thing is making a new settler for you for free every 5 turns. You can speed it up with money, of course, but that's pretty good.
The other thing I would add about getting fundamentalism is it's not only good for attack, it's good for defense.
Yeah.
If somebody's coming at you in the medieval, a good thing to do with the Indians is just to go ahead and switch into fundamentalism, and then if you have counterattacking units, you can easily swap people away, or even sometimes your archers. An archer army will have 6 attack. It's not too bad for defensive ratings of what the early offensive units have.
Or even a warrior army.
Or a warrior army if you don't have legions, yeah.
The Indian archer army can be devastating.
People can go back and listen to our last episode of Revcast and listen about the Arabs and how to use fundamentalism as well for attacking.
Even easier with the Indians, though, because unaffected by anarchy bonus.
Almost every turn go to anarchy, depending. Especially if you have Republic and you're trying to make a settler every 5 turns. Keeps people on their toes. The only real bonus to stay in is democracy. It doesn't really help you to be in Republic or fundamentalism when you're not controlling the action.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The Indians snowball like no other civ, I think. Once it starts rolling, it just is crazy.
You could be pretty bad off, and then all of a sudden, those growth resources start working, those trade resources start working. You've got fundamentalism, so you can attack and defend better. You've got culture coming, so you'll get that first great person, and maybe in that second great person quicker than anybody else. And then you get to the industrial, you get settlers for 10 hammers. They're half-price settlers. It's not like the American bonus where you get a lower gold rushing cost. It's a lower hammer cost. But that works out to be pretty good because 10 hammers in the industrial, you're already getting boosts with the Indians with production trade just all across the map, and now you're giving us cheap settlers.
They're so cheap. Normally want to have about 10 cities in medieval. If I have the space for them, and that's a really good reason to get navigation quickly, I'll probably have 20 within a few turns after hitting industrial.
But I've always found if I can make it to the industrial, it's going to be tough to kill me, because if you take one of my cities, I'm going to build 2 more. If you take both of those, I'm still going to be pushing settlers out. But if you aren't hurting me, if you're not pressing me, then I'm going to build those cities everywhere, and I'm going to fill up the whole freaking map. I'm going to get +1 culture for all of them. I'm going to be using up all those resources, and all of a sudden, it is a giant snowball, and it is best just to fill up every piece of map you can, as long as you have the patience to do it, or the timer's not pressing you down. That can be the one problem, is running out of time.
Smother your opponent to death.
Yeah.
You don't even need to attack them ever.
Who cares about losing 1 city when you got 30? And you can build another one for 10 hammers. Just pack those in. Pack some landlocked cities in. Most people don't do that, but it's great. Most of the best production cities are landlocked.
There in the industrial, it's still a good time to attack. I personally like catapults for the Indians more than knights, just because the Indians don't get a bonus for knights. Their knights are just
knights
average. So catapults have the same attack as knights, and they're cheaper, and you can get them faster, and they don't get wounded.
For me personally, in the industrial era, no problem. The extra 5 hammers isn't that much, and I like the mobility of knights.
I usually build both if I can.
But if you got to this point in the industrial era, it's kind of like choose your own adventure. Do you want to do knights? Do you want to wait for tanks?
10 cities, though.
Yeah.
What's the point of that? It might as well.
I used to always do wonders, and I recently has switched to always doing some kind of, even a wall or something, just to bank hammers. I mean, are you banking more than 100? Not in very many places.
Right.
I'll just let it build the library or temple. Even though we like fundamentalism and we're spending much of the game in fundamentalism, you can still use the library by going to anarchy at the end of your return. I'm not saying libraries are awesome or anything like that, but when you've got 40 extra hammers, might as well get one.
Well, in the modern era, they get half-price courthouse.
Certainly wouldn't want to build courthouses before then.
Yeah. If you have a super awesome city that's over 8 pops, that's going to get you closer to winning the game, then yeah, a courthouse would be fine.
Also, by modern, everyone has access to all the resources with just through technology, so you no longer have an advantage like you used to.
So how do you guys win the game normally with the Indians is what I'm getting at. If it's not in the modern, other than winning early with horse rushes.
For me, probably knights, catapults, and cruisers. I get to steam power, build a cruiser fleet, go to fundamentalism, load up all my armies, and go take somebody's capital, and it's game over. Because most people quit when they lose the capital. And arguably, I could be attacking a lot sooner, but I tend to really get caught up in expansion. And
it's fun to play with the Indians.
It's fun to play with the Indians, and I'm like, oh, that's such a good spot for a city.
Should we talk about Oxford bombers? I mean, it's definitely on my mind. I'm considering it. If not for me, then against him to try and just get Oxford and obsolete the bombers. Don't let him get them. And the catapult cruisers is nice, especially because steam isn't that hard to get. Following that tech path, maybe you have a couple great people, maybe one from invention. Steam power is a natural progression, and then on to industrialization.
I have a little bit of a lead that I know I can do that and then still back it up with bombers if I need to, but I don't usually need to.
For myself, it's a tough question to answer. I mean, because my Indian games are so varied. I would probably say knights, sometimes catapults, legions, or I guess just about anything. I don't normally tank rush with a lot of civs either, but I mean, I could do that. Or the bombers, which if the game goes longer, it would be bombers. There's no single unit that I use.
It's very game dependent.
It's very game dependent, and the Indians are the most variable civ out of all of them. Every game is so different, and I think that's why all 3 of us really love the Indians. They're not as strong in their opening, and they're really strong throughout the middle of the game. That's a little unique for some civs. Y'all have any tips for playing against a good Indian player?
Get them early. When is that not good advice?
Yeah. The Indians, great civ, or the greatest civ?
The greatest.
So I'm going to answer that too, just because why not? It's fun to watch Gandhi get all mad at you and threaten war and destroying you.
I meant to talk about that. That's what people are always talking about on all the different forums. Why did they ruin Gandhi? Gandhi was a pacifist. He would never do this, and he's the biggest warmonger in the game. Well, it's because he gets fundamentalism medieval, and if you don't have defensive armies, or if you're kind of weak at the time, he's going to declare war on you from across the map because he'll switch into fundamentalism. People don't put those two together. That is it for episode 20. Is it 20?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
One other thing.
The way
Go ahead.
It depends on who you are beyond that, I think.
The Germans can outproduce them.
China should be able to tech up ahead of the Indians. America should be able to out-expand them. The French should be able to have more baguettes.
Better wine.
Yeah.
For more information about Revcast, sibling shows Polycast and Modcast, or about Polycast in general, log on to the series' official website at thepolycast.net. Record date April 30th, 2010.
Civilization Revolution, sound clips, copyright, Take-Two Interactive.
Copyright Civilized Communication at civcom.net.
Right, so we don't have anyone new to meet this time. We've all stated our worthiness to advise others in the past, so we can get right down to business. I've been trying to think of a new intro. This is Revcast! Revcast! Got any ideas? Guaranteed to make the game better.
A revolution in casting.
Revolution in casting.
What are you, fishing?
In podcasting, yes. We'll work on that, I guess.
Welcome to the podcast revolution. It's Revcast.
Ooh, I like that. Welcome to the podcast revolution. It's Revcast.
Brought to you by.
Brought to you by. Yeah, we could use some sponsors. I'd take a check. I'm Al Thrasher. Me are Scotty X, and Ty has come back and decided to join the team. So, welcome. Follow him. Let's go on to the Civ of the Month.
Dum, dum, dum.
It's a fun Civ to play. I think they're very powerful. A long time ago, I wrote a strategy for this Civ, but I wouldn't recommend anyone follow it now. That was a long time ago, and I play differently now. We are talking about Germany.
Yeah, great Civ.
Very strong Civ. Good Civ in head-to-head because there's only one person to kill. Good Civ in free-for-all because you can do a lot with very little.
You end up next to another Civ, then they're in a lot of trouble.
Good Civ in the early game because your warriors are veteran. Good Civ if you're a little bit behind in tech. Amazing Civ if you're ahead in tech. If you're leading in tech with the Germans, it's pretty
a short game.
Yeah. There have been statements to the fact that the Germans, when used correctly, are basically top tier or just below the top tier. And I don't know, I've had enough kind of terrible games with them that I wouldn't say that's always true, but sometimes you can just be so powerful.
Their advantages play well to a really aggressive strategy, so those times that you're going well, the other guy will feel the pressure really quickly and it'll seem like you're doing incredibly well. You know, suddenly huge number of warriors, armies turn up and, you know, you're in some big trouble really early on.
Yeah, one of the things I like about playing Germany is that you can never really go wrong making warriors in Ancient. With some of the other civs, if you spend too much time building warriors, it's just kind of like, why did I build all these warriors? Now I have 19 warriors. What am I going to do with 19 warriors? But with Germany, that's great. We'll be 19 legions or 19 knights or 19 tanks, and that's really powerful. Hey, did you know that the Germans have a whole bunch of unique units? They have Panzer tank, 85mm gun, Hinkel bomber, and Me-109 fighter. Wow. Of course, none of that matters at all.
Right.
Doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
The starting bonus for Germany is automatic upgrades for elite units, which means that when your unit is elite, and you earn the next type of unit above that, the unit that unit would upgrade to, all of your elite units will upgrade at that point. You're not allowed to skip anything. If you have an elite archer and you research gunpowder before researching democracy, which you shouldn't do, but if you did that for some reason, you would not upgrade. We see the story once in a while that someone was like, I had, all these elite warriors and I got feudalism, but I forgot to get ironworking and they never upgraded, and then I just had a bunch of elite warriors, and that's a sad story.
Yeah.
You've probably been saving ironworking up for ages because you wanted to preserve the ironworking, the Legion upgrade for a desperate attack at some point. So.
Yeah, you still might have a chance at building Leonardo's workshop, but again, same problem, so get ironworking. If you get them out of order, if you get feudalism and then go back and get ironworking, will you at least get legions?
But I think you would.
I'm not sure on that because...
I don't know if there's ever been a situation where I got feudalism before ironworking. I mean, that's so far down the tech path that usually you backfill it by then.
Well, what happens is people are deliberately not backfilling it.
Keeping the beakers below 30, right?
Right, and you only have to keep your beakers below 30 the turn that you finish a tech.
Right.
I know that if you backfill ironworking the same turn that you earn feudalism, you do not get knights.
I see. Right.
So don't do that. You have to actually go and tech ironworking, and then you have to actually go and tech feudalism.
So that's
after. I think that probably most listeners get how the upgrade scheme works, so I don't want to spend too much time on that. If it doesn't make sense to you, I would suggest going by some forum or something, figure it out like that. So the starting bonus is the upgrades that works for all units, not just your warriors, but the warriors are the most interesting case, most powerful. As a side note, if you're playing single player with the DLC, there's an artifact that will give all of your units scout. That counts as being elite. So if you get that, then all of your units will upgrade for the rest of the game. Kind of cool, but that's single player. That's not even Game of the Week single player. It's just regular single player, so it's not that interesting.
The key thing about why warriors are useful is because they start off with their veteran upgrade, and so you're only 3 barb huts or whatever away from getting your upgrade, and once you've got that, you're away. Otherwise, if you had veteran archers as well, maybe you'd pop some huts with them, and then you'd get some pikemen, elite units to be able to wander around and give your warrior legion some defense. But as it is, the warriors are so easy to upgrade, there's no point worrying about anything else.
Yeah, warriors are the way to go. And of course, probably most listeners know also that if you get a barracks, which is unlocked at bronze working, which is a first-tier tech, then your warriors will start off as elite, so you don't even have to find any barbs.
Yeah.
That's the basis for the German upgrade strategy, is people will get that barracks, make a bunch of elite warriors, and then picking up techs so that they'll upgrade.
Germany's one of the few civs that I actually look to build a building with early. Once I get my 100 gold, I'm kind of looking to use that cash after I've gotten a settler to get the barracks in a nice production city and pump out those warriors.
You're not waiting for the industrial to get a half-cost barracks?
Nah, usually that's a little late in the game. It's kind of funny they get it so late, That would have been real nice in the ancient era.
You don't want to give up the other bonuses for that, obviously. Starting out. By now, everyone understands that I'm a die-hard settler mover. So definitely with Germany, I'm moving my settler.
You should be able to get an AI cap pretty much every game because of veteran warriors. So
just need to settle by the AI cap and not necessarily even always use a warrior army. Sometimes 1 or 2 warriors will take it.
Yep.
With the assistance of an actual German, a trick that has come to be known, Elbrecher, which is that you put 3 warriors next to a city, don't army them, attack with the first one, retreat before you die, attack with the second one, retreat before you die. Now hopefully you've wounded the defender, and now you form the army and attack with the army. And when you form the army, because one of the warriors isn't wounded, then the whole army will be not wounded. It could backfire. You could fail to wound the defender and give him a veteran upgrade, for example. But I've had great success with it. And one of the really cool things is that, say you get your 3 veteran warriors to a city, you attack with the first one, it's 1.5 to 1.5, and you win. You get elite right there, right then and there.
Yep.
Now you're elite. Now you get something really good like March, and then you can just cruise all over the world with that March warrior army and just wreak havoc.
I actually quite like getting galleys out with the Germans because you're going to have some of these warrior armies that don't have march, and you want to be able to get them across the map quite quickly.
Yeah.
But once you have the galley, you can kind of alleviate a little bit of that stress of getting your units off to the other guy. Hopefully do that a thing like maybe your march units are attacking at one point and your other ones are being dropped off a galley somewhere else. You know this sort of thing going on?
Mm-hmm.
Those skellies with the Germans mean you're going to be landing with some decent force.
Now, are you still bothering to take archers out for defense with those warriors, or not so much?
Sometimes, but not very often.
Yeah.
I might as well just build another army.
Right.
You're normally hitting them pretty early, too, so...
Now, when you guys are forming your armies, are you looking for 3 elite warriors to join as one army, or are you sticking 1 elite warrior with 2 regular warriors?
Whichever I can do, really.
Your balance of how many you're producing. If you've got a production city with a barracks, maybe you're producing quite a lot of them, but there's no need to focus too heavily on making all 3 of them elite, because it's more important that you get your 1 elite march guy with a couple of non-elites and get them over to their capital a few turns earlier than waiting more turns and having multi-upgrades.
Sure.
Turns are worth everything at the beginning.
When I'm starting out with Germany, generally when I settle my capital, all I care about is having 2 trees. 3 trees is nice, too. And anything else is nice, but generally all I care about is having 2 trees. And these days, I rarely build anything other than a barracks and warriors in my capital, so sometimes archers. I'm not teching in my capital. I'm not expanding out of it. I'm not growing it. It's just pure production, get the barracks up as quickly as possible. Once I decided I have enough warriors, hopefully I've gotten bronze working maybe out of a capital I've taken, maybe out of a second city or like a 100 gold city or something like that.
Say you've settler walk and you pop yourself next to one barb hut and you see another one about 3 turns away, right? You attack and they've both gone up to 2 flags, which is round about what you're likely to see at that stage. Do you take the 3 attacks by using the same warrior to take 1 hut and then to do 1 damage against the other one? Or do you create 2 warriors, take 2 huts with separate warriors, don't go elite, and then wander those 2 warriors out?
I do the second thing. I assume that I will find more barbs to attack. That second barb could disappear while I'm waiting for my warrior to get over to it.
You got to get them out there in different directions, too, so you can see the terrain and the map.
The first thing I do with the Germans is send as many warriors as possible in as many different directions as possible. So I would go after both of those, get more gold, buy more warriors. I'm trying to get some capitals. I'm trying to pressure my enemy. I'm trying to get my 100 gold fast so I can get the whole thing started. I need other cities. I can't really just do it all with Berlin.
You can rush your barracks in the city, but quite often I end up going, if I've got galley plus some extra warriors, if I've got some elite upgrades out there anyway, and I can make all of my warrior armies elite, then the option is I'm hitting you with a galley with some elite warrior armies on it earlier, or you're hitting me later with armies that just happen to have more upgrades.
Right.
But not necessarily you're 80 gold plus 80 gold odd behind in that scenario. Oh, I guess it depends on how far away your enemy is.
It depends on where your enemy is. It also depends on how many warriors you've been able to upgrade just by attacking barbarians and such. Unless you can be very fast, I wouldn't go in with 3 elite legion armies. I mean, if you can do that in 2000 BC, you're probably going to win. If you're doing it in 500 BC, that's probably way too late.
Yeah.
The earlier you go in, the more awesome it will be if it works. And if you get the iron working and you just have 3 armies and you lose them all, then that's it for upgrades. I mean, unless you pop a great leader somehow or something like that. Take stock and say, how long would it take me to get knights? Would it take me 8 turns? I mean, 8 turns to have units that are twice as good on attack, twice as good in defense, and twice as much movement. Is your opponent going to be able to come up with a counter to that and say, well, I would have died to your halfway good units 8 turns ago, but now that 8 turns have elapsed, I'm totally set. I mean, I think that if you manage to pick up Code of Laws by attacking Rome or something like that, that's going to speed things up. If you get monarchy, of course, that's huge for the Germans. Germans love to get monarchy.
And religion.
Germans really love to get religion. The other thing that's cool about the Germans is that you're kind of immune to being horse rushed as long as you get some gold. And you want to build warriors anyway. And if you have 6 warriors in your capital and some Yahoo comes along with a horse army, what's going to happen?
One of my relatively early games when I was starting out, I was Germans, and I built the normal thing, you build heaps of units, and for whatever reason, a lot of them had stayed close to home. And this guy came and attacked me with the Americans, so he loaded heaps of units, because he'd done the get the cheap units and then build as many as you can, and then attack me with it. And there were heaps of units, but they weren't enough, because there was just so many units there for counterattacking and things.
Nice.
And upgrade to legions. I upgraded to legions as he landed, I think, and then just couldn't take my cities.
If I have the chance, I like to settle Berlin on a hill too. Hill with 2 trees, because then you can send your warriors down off the hill. You know, however soon they come after you, you're going to have 6 attack off the hill with a warrior army, which is generally going to be enough to take out a horse army.
And with that nice gorilla upgrade, it'll be 50% better.
Yes, if somehow I have big culture with my 2 population capital.
Right.
If you're going for legions, you should stay ancient. Then, if you think the game will continue, then try to get to medieval and get the extra production, build what you need to build, consider Code of Laws if you think you might need to do that. If you're going with knights, then you're definitely in medieval. Unless you get free monarchy early in the game, you're unlikely to be able to get knights in the ancient era. I mean, you'd have to have bronze-working, iron-working monarchy. Probably not going to work.
Most civs, you're trying pretty hard to stay in ancient so you can rush out various things just before medieval. But with the Germans, you're not quite as much pressure.
Well, what I do is I stay in ancient until I'm kind of out of gold, and then I go into medieval.
Yeah, exactly.
Then I don't worry about that so much. Those are really awesome bonuses, and Germany gets another one in medieval, which is +1 forest production, which is just a huge bonus. I mean, it's kind of funny that it almost doesn't matter. If you have a good ancient era and you're going to have a bunch of legion armies and maybe a bunch of knight armies on your opponent, kind of doesn't matter that you get a production bonus in medieval, but that production bonus is still really nice. Generally, until the late game, doing all your production off trees, it's a +50% everywhere. It's like free communism after 5 techs with no drawback. Really great bonus.
It's great for storing hammers, too, for those future, the Oxford trick or any of the others.
My old German strategy, which I don't recommend people follow anymore, was basically to just expand a lot and build libraries using this production bonus. And I won all the time using it, probably because my opponents just simply weren't expanding enough.
Well, I mean, actually, when you start expanding, suddenly you're putting in 3 forests as opposed to 2 forests and deducing those settlers, which are then coming off of your 2-pop cities and forming another one for 3-pop somewhere and then spinning off another one. Well, that makes you one of the best expanders.
Right. Germans can expand very quickly with all of that production. If you have 6 per turn, then it's going to take you 3 and a little change to get a settler, whereas anyone else would take 5 turns to get that city.
And that in combination with the fact that if the other guy is good, he knows that your defense could be very strong as well, because your warriors and upgrades to legions.
I used to try to out-library Chinese players and do it pretty consistently. Because, I mean, the fact is, if you're building your libraries off forests, the German production bonus almost provides the same savings. Of course, China gets free literacy and +1 population, and those things that made those players that lost to me shouldn't have, but they did. You can really leverage that production. Once your knights are away or whatever, say I've sent 5 knights to go kill Scotty, but Scotty's wily and he might survive. He might lose a couple of cities, or you might lose a lot of turns during which he can't expand or tech, but can only build legions to back my knights. I've got all this extra production. I have a barracks. I can sit there and just keep making knights, and knights are good for much of the game, up until the point that someone's got tanks or Oxford bombers, perhaps. Knights are just pretty good units. If the game's not ending with my rush, I would definitely just keep making units and maybe save them for later, maybe drive them in somewhere right away. There's always the possibility that you can get a great leader and then you can just keep making elite ones to upgrade. Or you could just use them and have them gain experience that way. The industrial bonus is the half-cost barracks bonus, and that's probably the weakest bonus here.
Is actually pretty useless because you've probably built a barracks already, and if maybe even 2 of them. But if you get to that sort of stage, and what's the point in having the others? You can get the other guys, other units there, and merge them for veteran status and so forth.
Generally, I agree with you. Unlike the Zulu ones we were talking about last time, it doesn't hurt you. There's nothing wrong with having a cheap barracks. You don't have to get it. But if you compare it to, like, the Greeks and Chinese get half-priced libraries, with conceivably a building you would want in every city, there's no reason to have a barracks in every city. Just wasteful. But I've used this a few times. Sometimes you take a bunch of cities, and so you kind of have a new front that's started, and you decide you want a barracks there, and you can get it done in no time. It's an okay bonus. It doesn't hurt you. Most German games don't even last to industrial unless you are up against someone who's good, or
you're playing the Greeks or someone who's got some pretty strong defense, maybe the English.
Yeah, if I were playing the Greeks or the English, I would probably just wait a little bit longer and tech religion before attacking.
Right. Maybe get some battleships out to help with the support.
Battleships would tend to help too, yes.
Cruisers, I meant.
The point I wanted to make there was that if your game's running long, keep using the production. That's your advantage at that point. You may not have many more units to upgrade. You may not be able to get to tanks anytime soon, but you still have awesome production. You still can build a lot of units, and that can make a big difference in the game. And then the modern bonus is 2% interest on gold, which it gives you a little extra gold every turn. It's a fine bonus.
Get that econ victory.
There's nothing wrong with free gold every turn. I mean, it's a good bonus. I like it better than the plus 50% gold production penalty or bonus. That's been talked about on this program before.
But you have to be sitting around with a decent amount of gold in your bank to make a lot of use of it, which implies that you're not using your gold.
You do.
Downside there. Saying that it's a bad bonus, it's okay.
Start working on an economic victory. It's not going to amount to very much, but
only the English and the Americans have great modern bonuses anyway.
Yeah, right. This one's okay as far as modern bonuses go. But again, I know I used to get to modern in games with Germany because I would do economic victories and such, but I don't anymore, so it doesn't really matter.
Hardly ever do I find German games going beyond ancient even. It's warriors, and if not warriors, then legions, and actually pretty rarely knights. And then if it gets past knights, then something has gone badly wrong.
Or someone has done something really right. It can still be hard to play against America or China.
Oh,
yeah. Great Civ, because your first three bonuses, which are the ones that matter the most, are all really strong. And no real weaknesses or any problems or deficiencies. Anti-German strategies. Now, one thing that I like to do is bring up David Hasselhoff. And I find that sometimes they will turn away in shame. Sometimes
cower their head in shame, right?
Sometimes they'll be really enthusiastic about it. Some clear fans there.
That's the best strategy. But if you're unable to bring up David Hasselhoff...
You mean if your German playing opponent isn't actually German? Yeah. That's the problem.
Yes. I had some thoughts when I was playing Mort. One of the reasons why he lost was he got ironworking from the AI. Let's say you're the Romans, whatever reason, you're naturally getting your legions up fairly quickly. You could try making sure everybody you can find has ironworking, or that you get ironworking a little faster than usual, and just figure that if he takes one of their cities, there's pretty good chances he's going to pop ironworking and upgrade bonuses out the window.
Yep.
Right. That stops his elite units coming out, doesn't it?
Yep. I'm not sure how effective they would necessarily be in a game, but...
that can be effective. I've used that, in fact, to try to force my opponent, just by having it. Sometimes you get techs out of friendly villages and such.
Yep.
Generally, the tech that you're getting from the friendly village is a tech that somebody else has just researched. At least that's my experience. So, he might be sailing his galley around, and he's like, ooh, look, friendly village. Ironworking. That can happen. Good thing to do.
Yep. And also your ironworking will come in handy if you need to repel him when he gets to you, because he's just more likely than the other civs to be on you with a good attacking
If he's coming at you with legions, then that's 4.5 defense, which means that even just a 6-attack legion, or better yet, come off a hill, 9 attack, you're going to kill his armies. And remember, his armies are more important than yours, so kill them.
If you're sitting in a capital, you probably leave them all separate, and you'll do your El Breacher, or whatever you want to call it, on as he comes in to try and take your capital.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if you call it that when you're defending a capital.
Maybe. But, you could try that, but you have to be a little bit careful, because if they come at you with March and you just have 1.5 defense legions in your capital, you can get overrun by an infiltration army.
You're going to want to chuck in that archer as well, I think.
Sure, but
if he's marching blitz, he could expose you.
Well, what if he comes with 2 armies? 2 March infiltration armies. Or the first one doesn't have to have infiltration. So just a March army comes up, kills your archer.
You got 2 archers in.
Now you have 2 archers, I see. And a battleship fleet, right?
That's it.
Depends on the stage of the game. Yeah. But you guess what he's going to come at you with, and you provide defenses appropriate.
Well, you don't guess, you use scouts.
Yeah.
Of course.
But you see, he might come on a galley or something.
Well, you got to watch the seaways, too. Legions aren't fast, so if the galley's coming, and if you know your opponent is a good player, not just someone who's like, ooh, a galley, I guess I'll sail around, then probably what you need to do is get your own galley and attack that galley. Hope for the 1-to-1 win, or 1-to-1.5 it could be, but you still...
I think I remember playing Morpork, and he beat me like about 3 or 4 times in a row on those 1-to-1s. So the galley wandered towards me.
You beat me like the last 5 times, Scotty.
Well, yeah, I know, but that's just because I'm better.
I see.
Wow. Ouch.
Mofflock's lucky, but you're skilled, I see.
Yep,
Scotty has upgraded galleys.
It's a special skill, too.
Comes from the New Zealand background, no doubt.
Yeah. Morpork's even better than me, unfortunately. You've got to press that build button at just the right instant.
Uh-huh.
What kind of realistic defense are you going to have against a German player who's coming at you with 3 to 5 Legion armies? Are you going to be stacked with archers and try and outlast that? Or are you going to try and counterattack that? I mean, that's a lot to defend against.
I prefer an active defense. I would build my own legions. If he comes with a vet archer army, then that kind of sucks. The other thing to do is to, especially if you can keep the waterways clear, especially if you are Spain, and he'd be insane to put a bunch of his best units on a galley just to get sunk by your galleon. What I would really want to do is fortify some units on a hill near my capital that he's going to have to pass by, and you can really make use of the map with this kind of stuff.
You need to, really, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're waiting for him to come to you and your capital, then you're in trouble.
You can start sort of with your scouts out as he comes through, just try and knock off a unit. As he comes through and attacks your guy on the hill, maybe you counterattack and kill his legion as he takes it, and then just wear him down so his force, when it finally meets your city, isn't enough to take out that archer army.
Your units will build fortresses eventually outside of cities, and they'll actually have a higher defense than they would have in the city. That can be really great. And legions off hills, don't bother with a barracks unless you are flush with cash. 9 attack is good enough. If you can have a hill with no forests around it, then you're probably pretty good unless he's seriously outnumbering you. Do that and counter and try to kill his units. The German player is probably not going to be teching really hard. You don't really have to worry about, oh my god, he's beat me to industrialization or something like that. He's probably not even thinking about that. He's probably not even worried about who gets industrialization. He's probably expecting the game to be over before that happens. So don't go teching irrigation with 2 cities and then Code of Laws. And now you've done like 250 beakers worth of tech and you haven't built any units, and then all these legions show up. That's like the number one way to lose. Instead, focus on units. You don't have as good production necessarily, and units aren't as good, but your units are right where you need them to be. They're your cities or next to your cities. They can set up ambushes. You can get a great artist, another thing that can help a lot.
The only problem with the great artist is he takes a city, you flip it, and he's probably got some more units just sitting right.
You've also eliminated one of his armies just by doing that, and maybe he's dumb and he moves all of them to the city.
I've been guilty of that.
The last thing you want to do is just build archer armies everywhere, because unless you're Aztec, then you can play the odds and hope that works. But anyone else, you'll get chewed up. But like I was saying, don't worry about tech too much. Just work on your defenses. Get ready for the inevitable attack. It is inevitable. And understand that if you survive that attack, you can, first of all, you'll have units of your own. You can try to counter with them, or you can continue defending and just try to out-expand him, because he's put all of his money into this attack. He's put all of his tech into this attack. And if it fails, you probably have the upper hand in the game. They can be a really tough civ to deal with. The game I alluded to earlier, I took all 3 AI capitals very quickly. I was just positioned perfectly to do it, and it wasn't even very hard. So all I needed was my opponent's capital. He built some legions and he tried to attack me. He was Spanish, so he dropped legions off by various cities, but I had fundamentalism, and I had my armies that I had taken those AI caps, and I just left them nearby so that I could fend him off when he came after them, and I was able to defend, and then I delivered my armies, and he didn't have a chance. If I had been on the other side of that, I don't know how I could have survived. When Germany takes all those cities, and if you get 3 free cities, you have a clear tech advantage. It's going to be hard to keep up in tech, because that's a lot to gain.
Well, you're talking about Germans being good when they have the tech advantage. If you have the tech advantage, are you going to just expand and gun really hard for feudalism? Or
I did go for feudalism in that game because his capital was so far, and he was the Spanish. He also knew that he had to build units to attack me. He didn't get as much gold. He only picked up 1 artifact, so that was not particularly lucky for the Spanish. And it was the Ark of the Covenant, so who cares? Germans don't care about that.
Yeah. There'll be a temple in all the cities that you're going to take.
Well, it gets destroyed. He built some island cities, but I think he just teched ironworking. He might have tried to give me a city, but I don't know. I had armies pretty quickly. He tried attacking me. He tried attacking a city that looked weak. And
yeah, I mean, anytime you get the 3 AI caps against one other human opponent, there's not much you can do to combat against that.
Right. That's why the Germans are so powerful, because you just hone in on that remaining city and just go take it out.
Right.
What else? Anything else? I think that might be it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us on Revcast.
Thanks for having us.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Tschüss, bis später.
Right. Yeah.
I should have counted that before this episode.
Edit that out, Dan.
I mean, whoa.
Sorry.
Is that what it is?
Something like that.
Something like that. Just Google it. If you don't know how to Google it, well, I don't know. You're just not going to do very well in the tournament.
Thrasher's answer for everything.
Personally, I would probably not wait most of the time. I don't know what that was.
Something fell off, don't worry.
Welcome to Revcast.
For more information about Revcast, sibling shows Polycast and Modcast, or about Polycast in general, log on to the series' official website at thepolycast.net.
Record date:
June 16th, 2011.
Civilization Revolution sound clips. Copyright Take-Two Interactive. Copyright Civilized Communication at civcom.net.